This is the One Girl Revolution podcast, a podcast that highlights the stories of world-changing women and girls across the country. We hope that these stories inspire you, but even more so, we hope that these stories help you to see your own value, your purpose, and your power to change the world through your life. Every woman and girl is a One Girl Revolution. Hello and welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl Kate here. On today's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I am honored to welcome a dear friend of mine, a woman I love, admire, and am continually inspired by, Leigh Fitzpatrick Snead. Leigh is the author of the upcoming book, Infertile but Fruitful, and she carries her story with such grace, honesty, and deep, abiding love. And I'm so excited to have her here, and I'm so excited to introduce her to you. Leigh has walked the long, winding road of infertility, a road that can be lonely, isolating, and heavy in ways that are hard to put into words. She never conceived children biologically, but she and her husband, Carter, became parents in another beautiful way through the adoption of their 4 incredible boys. Their family is a testament to what it means to embrace the path that's laid before you. They live with such purpose, openness, and joy, and they remind all of us that life's greatest gifts often arrive in ways we never imagined. One of the many reasons I'm grateful for Leigh, and one of the reasons I wanted to have her on this podcast, is the way that she invites us to look again at our own stories, especially the parts that feel painful or unfinished. For all of my sisters out there like me who are hoping, praying, and trying for children, Leigh's story is a reminder not to overlook the quiet lessons and unexpected graces that this path can hold. Infertility can be isolating and deeply difficult, but it does not mean that your life is stalled or your story is empty. There is beauty unfolding every single day in every facet of your story. There is purpose in the waiting, and Leigh is one of the most powerful, tender, and hope-filled examples of that truth. Her voice, her heart, and her wisdom are true gifts in my life, and I am so grateful to share them with you today. So settle in, take a deep breath, and open your heart to this beautiful conversation. Here's my conversation with Leigh. Leigh, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you, Kate. I'm so glad. I can't believe I get to be on it.
I am so excited to have you on. And I was laughing as I was preparing for this interview because you and I have been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we've ever gotten to do this, like just sit with no distractions and nobody asking
No.
us questions. And I'm so excited to
Yeah,
highlight
me
your
too.
story and share a little bit about what you're doing and the great work that you're doing. And you have a new book coming out that I definitely want to talk about. But before we get into that, I love to rewind on this podcast and hear a little bit about the evolution of the person, right? We're all multifaceted and our stories are full of many chapters. And so I would love to rewind, Leigh, and hear just a little bit about who you are, where you're from, anything that you could share with our listeners, kind of maybe before you got married, before you had kids, that kind of part of your story.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Morgantown, West Virginia. My dad was a professor at the university there, and my mom was a teacher of the gifted. They divorced when I was 4, I think, almost 5. And um, I still saw both of them. We all lived in the same town. But I was an only child, a little bit lonely. I had a best friend whose parents were also divorced, who was also an only child. And our moms were friends, and we spent a lot of time together. And, I was kind of a high achiever sometimes, but I wasn't a real gunner. I felt like a lot of my friends wanted to be doctors, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I was pretty sure I wanted to get out of Morgantown. And so when I graduated from high school, I got a Rotary scholarship to study in Finland for a year. Yeah, so I did that, and I had deferred at a couple of different colleges, but um, I've decided on St. John's College, the Great Books College in Annapolis, Maryland. And it was just a nice break. I'd been sort of more theater, band, dance in high school. And the thing about when you have a small school of 400, uh, all like the book nerds, we all play sports with each other because it's, nobody feels sort of, ostracized anymore. So everybody, comes out for intramurals, and I rode crew and I got really into running, and I was really sporty in college. And that's actually how I met my husband, through
Tell
sports.
that story. Okay, tell that story because I actually couldn't remember how you and Carter met. So
Yeah. So it was the fall of my freshman year, and we were both doing club rowing, a crew team, and we met there. And as Carter sort of explained it to me, like as years went on, when he was a freshman, all the junior and senior boys kind of swept in and, stole all the freshman girls just because the school of 400, new fresh faces coming. Um, and so it was sort of like his turn, I guess. And he just felt like it was good. He had spent a summer teaching Spanish teaching English in Spain to little boys through a Christian or Catholic organization, and sort of had a lot of good spiritual direction, and came home with his light on. And we saw each other at Mass. We were seeing each other at these sports events, and we both really like to laugh. And we made each other laugh. And, sort of it goes from there. That's how we met my freshman year and his junior year.
y
Um, yeah.
you and Carter are like two of my favorite people. You're just full of so much joy. And I feel like every time I've been in either or both of your presence, I'm like laughing, crying. And I can only imagine what your family life is like. I know it's not
Yeah.
always the happy laughter. There are a lot of difficult life things that all of us experience, but you're just such joyful people. And so that's one thing that I just have always loved about you and Carter.
Yeah, we feel really lucky. We don't take it for granted that we found each other, and that we found each other early, and it was still right because, I mean, meeting the person you're going to be with for the rest of your life at 19, sometimes you don't always have the best judgment. You're still a kid. But, I think while I don't recommend dating for 4 years before you get married, because that was frustrating and a struggle. And I do think it gave us time to still be, I mean, we were, you're kind of a child still, while you're in college. And so we really got to be really, really good friends. And I think that's what helps us get through, tough times that come up as they do. And this, we're 27 years married now.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm sure it feels like you blinked and you lived a whole lifetime together.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something. It's hard. Like when you're asking for the backstory, it's such a small, it's a smaller and smaller fraction all the time of like life before Carter, and
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that it's a little bit hard to remember
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah,
Well, I want to get into kind of leading towards your book. I want to get
hmm
into your fertility journey and just
Sure.
whatever you feel comfortable sharing with our listeners. But you and Carter get married, and what were those early conversations like with you, around hopes for the future, hopes for a family? And then maybe can you share about kind of your own fertility journey and your experience there?
Sure. Well, I think it had never really occurred to me. I'd never seen it. Or heard about it talked about in a positive way, to sort of meet someone in college and get married right after graduation. So that was all sort of novel. Um, but we had heard, and there were actually, because of it's such a small school, a lot of, we call ourselves Johnnies. A lot of Johnnies do end up marrying other Johnnies. So we had seen some people, get married actually even in college. And sort of all of a sudden it was like, wow, you can do that? You're allowed to do that? But so anyway, but Carter had graduated and went to law school at Georgetown. I was still in Annapolis. But we got engaged and we got married, and we knew we wanted a family. But he was still in law school the first year we were married, and we were pretty still like vulnerable to the suggestion that you have to have all these things checked off on your list before you can have kids. So we didn't try. We used, natural family planning to avoid pregnancy. Although I say this in my book too, not very strictly. So I think we probably should have begun to suspect something a little bit earlier. And we had sort of a plan. And while I was in graduate school at Catholic U, I I was in a PhD program. I wanted to finish all my coursework. And then my plan was to get pregnant for the last year of courses, get and then give birth, after finals. And then I would have an excuse not to write my dissertation because I decided I really didn't want to write a dissertation. Even though I really liked classes and I liked, studying philosophy, I didn't want to be a professor. I didn't. And so I thought, well, good. I don't have to have any humiliating things. It'll just be I have this baby, and I'll just put it off forever, and then no one will ask any questions, hopefully. Um, so that didn't happen, and we
Yeah.
tried, and it didn't work after a year. And so in that time, Carter had begun to work for the President's Council on Bioethics under Leon Cass in the George W. Bush administration. And he was their general counsel, and he was drafting a government report called Reproduction and Responsibility. So while at the time when we were trying to get pregnant, basically he was learning about a new thing that could be wrong, like every week, every couple of weeks, something else. And we just said, okay, but we'll wait. And I tried acupuncture, I tried to do some diet stuff. Um, but you start to get worried. You just assume, I just felt we always felt fertile, I don't know what the thing is, but we just thought like this is obviously going to happen, even if it's taking a long time. And so then we kind of knew about Catholic healthcare and NAPRO. We had actually taught ourselves natural family planning. So we knew there was Dr. Hilgers in Nebraska. But you had to learn a new method and then go to Nebraska because there weren't so many NAPRO technology trained doctors. And we thought, oh, I can't wait. We've already waited this year. We'll just see somebody in the DC metro area, right? Because it's like there's tons and tons of fertility doctors. And this one had been like on the cover of Washingtonian and all these things. And it just really turned out that he was really good at selling and, doing IVF. And we thought, no, that's fine. We'll go in. I had a concentration in medical ethics, and Carter was, becoming Mr. Bioethics at the time. And we thought, we know what to do. We know what the catechism says. We know what the church teaches about these things. We'll go in. We'll just say what we'll do and what we'll not do. We'll do it ourselves. And it was to say it's an exercise in frustration is like an understatement. I mean, I was 27 at the time, and this guy couldn't wait to, we called it enroll me in his IVF program, even though we said we weren't going to do it. We weren't going to do it. Eventually, when I refused for like the 80th time to do IVF, he's like got so angry and pointed back to his labs and said, I'm creating life back there, not destroying it. And we're like, okay. And so we left. And our plan was to then finally do all that it took to go see Dr. Hilgers. In the meantime, you know, we thought about adoption and it was never a big thing for us. Like it was just an easy thing to do. We just really wanted to be parents. So we talked to some friends who had adopted, and everyone said basically the same thing, like just start, the home study, just start because it can take a really, really long time. And when you're ready, you want to be ready. So we did that and we found an agency, and 6 weeks later we had a baby. So then uh, we ended up like my dad actually got really sick and then he died. And then Carter had been offered the job at Notre Dame to be a professor. So we had it, my father died. Then we moved. And then, we have a little baby, a new place. But by the time he was 2, he was already asking for siblings because, he could see that, his little cohort of toddlers, like everybody was having baby number 2 at that point. So uh, we did the stuff. I had to learn Creighton model by phone because you have to go with a specific instructor. And then eventually he was 3 by the time we went to Nebraska, and Dr. Hilders did my laparoscopy. And he gave us really good chances, 75% under his care. And still, no baby, no pregnancy. Um, we ended up taking a break a couple years later because we were doing, Carter was teaching the Notre Dame London program, which was really great. And I just thought, ugh, these are kind of powerful drugs, the needles, the whatever. It's already weird enough that I'm in Indiana and my doctor's in Nebraska. I don't want to put a whole ocean between us. So we decided to take a 6-month break. And at the end of the break, I said to Carter, well, I guess I should call Dr. Hilgers and get going again, with the thing, maybe redo blood tests, figure out where we are. And then he just said, why don't we just adopt again? You know? And we never stopped hoping that we would, have a biological baby. But it just made sense. It was right. And so once we finished that home study, um, we got twins within 48 hours.
Every woman, every girl. The world tells them they don't matter, but we know the truth. Every woman and every girl is a one girl revolution. Through the Every Woman, Every Girl campaign, we're telling powerful stories, lifting voices, and reminding women and girls everywhere of their worth, their purpose, and the power that they hold to change the world. But we can't do it without you. Your donation helps us share more stories, reach more women and girls, and change more lives. Join the movement today. Support the campaign. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate. Because when every woman and every girl rises, the whole world changes. Leigh, like there's so many, I think about it all the time. There's so many little babies and so many kids too of all different ages that just need a family. And I
Yeah.
know there's so many, gosh, I feel like I've seen so many stories recently, even just on social media, people sharing like these tragic stories about where a family of kids had one parent left, one living parent, and the parent died in a car accident or died of something, cancer or something. And it's like
Yeah.
there's so many children out there. And I don't know if this is your experience, but I feel like there's less conversation about adoption in the world. Um, and there's such a push for, IVF and all of these other things. And to me, that's really sad. And even I was thinking as I was preparing for this, you and I have a mutual friend, Maddie Kearns, who wrote this
Mm.
incredible piece, which I'll link in the show notes so people can read it in the Free Press, just about her experience. And I'm thinking about, you sharing your story and your experience, your fertility journey. I'm thinking about my own and so many other family members. And, Maddie kind of had very similar things happen to what you had happen. And it's so frustrating to me that there isn't more openness or opportunities to have a wider conversation about what fertility means, all the different things that could go on. In women's bodies are so fascinating, right? We're
Yeah.
full of so many facets. And it's almost like the world has just turned a blind eye to that. Why are we not looking at women's bodies, like their health, their wellness, what they're eating, what they're drinking? Like there's no push for that. And that's so frustrating to me. And then on the flip side, I feel like there isn't as much conversation about adoption in the world. Just as somebody, who has not adopted a kid, and I know we have a lot of friends who have adopted children, but in the wider spectrum of things, I remember in the 90s, like hearing more about adoption, and even my parents like seeing news stories and being like, oh, and they went through like a home study. We never ended up adopting,
Mhm.
but they went through the whole like process because it was more of a cultural conversation. And I feel like it's not happening as much.
Yeah, I think part of that too is the closing of a lot of international programs. I
Hmm.
think for some people, I know that they're more comfortable thinking about adopting an orphan because I think the idea of having a relationship with the family of origin, it makes things really complicated for a lot of people. So I think that might have something to do with it because I think people felt really comfortable adopting from overseas because they could just erase kind of that part because that's definitely an emotional thing to relate to a birth mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I really wish when you were talking about that, I just keep thinking that I just wish that someone had talked to me about my fertility before I had even wanted a baby. Like why, when I had my first, pelvic exam, well woman checkup, why wasn't that part of the conversation? Like, why isn't there like a baseline test or something just to see like, hey, is there something, wrong? I mean, I don't know if it would have helped me at all. I had unexplained infertility, but just to be aware of it, to do something. Um, because no one ever said it would be impossible for you to get pregnant. So maybe there were things, maybe I would have been more motivated to not put off, trying to conceive. Even though it was just a couple years, who knows, right? Um, yeah, and I wish that I just wish that were a normal part. I think it is. I do see it growing. I do see young women being taught these natural methods, and I know that there's been lots of new apps and things. I signed up for one at one point, I guess, and I didn't use it for very long. And I get an email every day, and it's like, today's day 1,600 of your cycle, because I never entered any more
Yeah.
data in. And
Right.
I'm like, I really should just unsubscribe to that, but I'll do that
Yeah.
later. Yeah, but
Well,
yeah, I think that's that awareness, like we have these really miraculous, complicated bods. Like we need to start treating them that way early.
yeah. And it's really women, Lee, like that's what I'm thinking about. Like with these apps and with these other things, like women are waking up and saying, I want to learn about what's going on with my body. And even I would love to see more emphasis even like with teenagers. I wish that this is all stuff
Yeah,
that I learned as a teenager, that like in different parts of your cycle, you might feel like this, or different points in your
yeah,
cycle, you might feel like this, or you might have this going on, and normalize that, right? Like our hormones are all over the place sometimes, and
yeah.
normalizing those conversations. And so I do love that now there's like Temp Drop, which you sleep with, and it tells you like what's going on with your temperature
Oh,
every night, which is cool. It's like another app. And
really
then,
cool.
yeah, and then Keg, and like there's so many different apps or new technology that's coming out
Yeah.
that's not covered by insurance. And so women
Mm.
are like taking that on themselves and just saying, I'm going to change things and I'm going to ask questions. And I love, even so many of our friends have gone through like, okay, let me ask this question, or let me go find this doctor seems to be open to alternatives, and let me go and see if they can help me. And women are really leading the charge. And that was a
Yeah.
big part of like why I wanted to have you on, because it's like, I see so much hope and it is in women. It's not, we're not waiting for the medical community to make some big discovery. It's women that are saying, I'm going to take ownership of my own health and wellness. I'm going to try things. I'm going to ask questions. And it really is on us to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing too because I see it a lot with OBGYNs who are women who are into these sort of like holistic practices that address like the whole health of the woman. Like a healthy woman should be able to conceive and carry a pregnancy to term. That's our baseline. And they're also becoming advocates, publicly outspoken, giving talks, whatever. And again, it's a woman. It's a woman who is an expert in this field, but she's also leading the charge in terms of advocacy and making those kind of treatments available to everyone.
So, Lee, I want to talk about like as you're going through, and maybe it's I know you were all there were a lot of things going on in your life, is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say. Because you're like adopting you're adopting, your first son, and then you're adopting the twins, and then you're still doing, you're doing some of this fertility stuff. But I know that there are really difficult moments for all of us, when you're going through your infertility journey, and it can feel very isolating. What were things that helped you, or were there any resources or connections that you feel like really, what were the things that helped you like during those dark moments?
I think the most important part of getting through that was the friendships, because people with fertility troubles tend to find each other, um, and or we get sort of fixed up, you know. And I mean, I have one woman who is still one of my very dear friends, and we were sort of doing it all together. We were actually both traveling to Nebraska to see Dr. Hilgers. We also both adopted and were still trying to conceive at the same time. We had so much in common, and it was just like this comfortable place to be. As the two of us as couples, we could all be together and speak the same sort of, vernacular about the whole thing, and just commiserating and just like being able to sort of share those more sort of petty things, like let relax that stiff upper lip, be like, oh, so and so's pregnant again, and obviously you are happy for them, but it just drives it home that you are still not pregnant. And so to have someone to do that with, and especially someone who shares your values and worldview about things, I think it really helps. So I was really blessed with that. And then that list of friends has just grown. Yeah. And so I think that support is the most important thing. Yeah,
Community and support is so important for all women, no matter what we're going through in life.
exactly.
And what's cool to me is social media has really opened up more conversations. And I'm so grateful for people like you who are sharing so openly about your story, your journey, your struggles, your joys, because that's social media has really become a connecting point for women to share information and connect because of their struggles or things they're going through in life. And so I love seeing that. And even for resources, right? I know that I'm like in the fertility algorithm because I get all of these like, oh,
Yeah.
here's a new person that I can follow. But it's so cool to me because we need to make sure that women don't feel so alone because it can be so isolating when you look around, you're like, oh, so and so is pregnant again, and so and so. And here you are, like changing everything in your life and going through all these tests and trying to figure out what's going on. And so I'm so grateful for women like you who are sharing so publicly about, what you've gone through.
Yeah, and I wasn't probably ready to do it 10 years ago, but somehow turning 50 and just knowing, like, it's not, I mean, just saying and believing it and knowing it, like, I am never going to be pregnant. It's like, okay. But it's weird because I still, honestly, I'll read about one of these articles or I'm still, kind of in those algorithms and I'll see like some sort of new treatment or a new supplement. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should try that. I'm like, no, no, you are 50 and perimenopausal and like get over it. It's okay. Um, but it is hard because our youngest is 3. And so it wasn't that long ago that I had a tiny little baby. And so
Yeah.
it's hard to break free of those sort of baby urges. Although now I just need my 20-year-old to grow up a little bit more and give me grandbabies.
Let's get into your book. Let's get
Okay.
into
Oh, yeah.
Infertile but Fruitful. How did your book come to be? How did this? I know you've written publicly, you've talked about your own journey, but how did the book come to be?
Yeah. Well, so I wrote those pieces for the Register and I got a big response, especially from, it was actually funny. I mean, even like men reached out. Um, Priests were so happy to have a resource because sometimes they didn't know how to start a conversation or where to sort of point someone. And then I have a mentor who just said to me, she's like, "This is your book." And so I put together a proposal and I, sent it out there. I used connections, as we all do, to facilitate finding publishers. And then I uh, got an offer, and then I spent a year writing the book.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, tell people about Infertile but Fruitful. Talk about your book.
Well, it's mostly a story about my marriage and the 20 years about that we spent trying and failing to conceive, um, and how that worked for us, what it did, what our experiences with healthcare were. And then every chapter I have some sort of practical lessons, like I think one I repeat a couple times is to find your tribe, find these women who can support you and empathize with you, and that you can care for them too, because that it feels good to be someone else's support, even though you're suffering at the same time. Just about knowing your stuff, knowing what you're comfortable with, knowing what you believe in terms of fertility treatments. Um, uh, I one of the chapters has a list of TV shows and movies about infertility. If you feel like, a good cry or just, some sort of like one way, not any kind of conversation, but you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah.
and let's try to think of some other tips. But anyways, so those practical tips are interwoven with our personal story. And I really share a lot of stuff. And I also include the stories of a few other women, because of their stories are different than mine. And I want those stories to also I want someone to pick up the book and be able to find something for them. Not every woman who experiences infertility is called to adopt, you know, and that's great. That's fine. That's totally okay. I think there's a lot of pressure on those women to adopt. I think some of that is even just social pressure because sometimes people don't know what to do with you, right? When you're experiencing infertility, they don't know what to say. They're uncomfortable. And then you're uncomfortable. You're trying to make them comfortable. And it's, you know, it's an awkward, it can be an awkward situation. And, but once, if you adopt, then it's like, okay, you're kind of like me. So now I kind of know what to do with you. Whereas, you know, women who aren't called to adopt, you know, I feel like they still feel like, oh, those are the people who never had kids, you know? And so I think that's important. I think there's a story about male infertility, which I think, again, we don't talk a lot about. I don't think men are anywhere near as comfortable as women are about talking about it. And we're not that comfortable talking about it, so you can imagine. So I think those stories need to come out more too. You know, somebody who had a hysterectomy really early, you know, in her pursuit of trying to, you know, fix her endometriosis and all the other kinds of things that were wrong, she ended up having a very early hysterectomy, meaning permanent infertility, way before, you know, her biological infertility, potential fertility, I guess, would have run out the clock. So I think that was a big part for me. And one of the really interesting parts about that was I had thrown the net pretty wide and asked about like 8 women that I knew, and only 3 responded. And I think, and for some people, it was just too hard to kind of write down those things. And some of them felt like, wow, I've never really dealt with this before. I haven't dealt with this properly for myself. And so that alone was a really interesting thing, you know, that people who I had had so many personal conversations with, but writing it down was something they just felt like they just weren't equipped to do then or maybe ever.
It's so personal, right? And there's so many facets of life that are really personal. And I've had to learn, and Leigh, you know me, that like I have so many things of in life I've been very public about. And like
Hmm.
I know you've experienced the same thing, but I've had to like learn even with family members or other friends, like that it's okay. Like it's okay if you don't feel it's similar to if you don't feel like you're called to adopt. Like that's okay. Like that's your story, that's your journey. Some people don't feel comfortable or called to share their stories, but I will say that I love when people do share things, whether it's on social media or in a book like yours, share their stories, because you never know what you share that might help somebody else and might be a
Yeah.
connecting point. And all of our stories are so unique, just our life stories, right? Not even about fertility. It's like all of our life stories are so unique and different. And so I just encourage anybody who's listening, like if there are opportunities, even just one person to one person sharing your story, you never know how that might impact that other person.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think there's a real kinship I have found between people who experience infertility, who experience repeated pregnancy loss, um, people who have children with disabilities, um, people who feel called to be married and haven't found their spouse yet. Just these big life things that's just, you know, this isn't how I planned my life to be. This is different. This is, you know, life isn't sort of a, you know, a menu at a restaurant where you just check it and you get exactly what you ordered. It's just not the way it goes. And so there's that camaraderie in those things, especially those things that are so basic, you know, to your just your family, your future, like the sort of the, you know, the bass notes of what you thought was going to build this sort of symphony of your life, when they don't work out. And I think that there's just this sort of unspoken understanding between groups of people like that. Yeah, and in fact, I used to, especially because we were married young and experienced infertility, you know, in our 20s, that I used to offer up that suffering for, especially for women who were looking for a spouse. And that helped me too, to be like, listen, I'm so lucky that I have found this soulmate. Even though I hate that word, but you know, like like it didn't have to go that way, but somehow we ended up in the same place with the same, I don't know, same something, and it worked out for me. And that doesn't. And I think like it's important to understand that that helped me focus on like really no one's life is perfect. There are things we have to do, crosses we have to carry. Yeah.
My mom, that reminded me, my mom would always tell a story about her dad on his deathbed, Lee.
Hmm.
He said, "I'm just a work in progress." And my mom was like, "What? Like you're dying, like you're literally in the hospital and you're dying. I'm just a work in progress." And to me, like I've taken that on as like sort of a life theme, where it's like I'm
Yeah.
just a work in progress, and also like my life is still being built, and like I'm still like learning and growing, and we should always be evolving and becoming the person that we were created to be. And I think when you look at life that way, it might not be exactly how you expected. I got married and like I thought I was going to have kids right away, and that didn't happen. But seeing it as that is like there are so many lessons in these different chapters, and we're just a work in progress, but also our life is just a work in progress, and there's something beautiful. And sometimes things, and I was thinking about you and Carter and your story, like if you had kids right away, you probably wouldn't have the kids that you have right now. and
Oh, I think that all the time.
and I
That
think
these
about
are
that too,
I
is
mean,
like,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like, okay, maybe there's something, God or whatever, people who are, everybody who's listening, whatever, that there's something else working. There's a greater plan at play. And so if we can just kind of say that and like, okay, like maybe there is a bigger reason, or maybe, you're going through infertility because you're going to be able to help other people. You're going to be able to either break, I think back to Maddie's article, like I love that she shared so publicly her own journey, and she helped other people to see like, hey, I'm not so alone. Now she has her beautiful little baby girl.
Mhm.
But we need to find opportunities to see those glimmers of hope, or those opportunities for us. Yeah, and how our story is being written.
Yeah, I love that because it really is true that, like, say when you're 22, 23, 25, even 27, you imagine when you get to your 40s, early 50s, like you'll be fully cooked. Like everything will be like set and shellacked, and this is it. And because you can see other people and you're like, that's what you think about them, that they are fully cooked. And someday I'm going to be cooked too. And no, it's just not true, which is why sometimes, well, maybe it's just me, but you forget how old you are, or, like things about your life, and it's still, you're thinking about the future and what to do. And it just, because it just keeps coming, life, until it doesn't. Yeah, so I love that about your grandfather.
To me, your book is so timely, obviously, because some of these different types of conversations about fertility are happening. Why do you think that this is the time for this book?
It was actually after I had started to write it that I realized now was a really good time. It's a good time for me personally. Life is gift, and your life is a gift. Um, and so it's even if, your life is spent not getting pregnant, it's still a gift. Um, and we can't ask for it or demand anything of it. And I think that all of these sort of newsy items, I think, is the administration going to support, going to fund IVF, or is it not going to fund IVF? I think every people are just looking at it more now. And I really hope that I can just give. I mean, one of the reasons I wrote the book is because, I mean, this was again 20, 25 years ago. There just wasn't anything out there. Almost all the stories either ended in pregnancy or ended in IVF. And that's, I wanted to fill the gap because not every infertility story has, a pregnancy as its happy ending. And to show that there are other happy endings, and that this is a picture of a life of a couple who, this is what infertility looks like when IVF is off the table. Um, I think about it almost sort of parallel to the idea of if, um, somebody were to write a book about, well, we're both Catholic, so a Catholic marriage, and be like, this is what the ups and downs of marriage look like when divorce is off the table. Like, this is how we live. This is what that looks like. Because if you pick up the, New York Times or The Cut or anything, which I read all of it, The Atlantic, I read all, um, you're going to see that, all this thing about the gray divorces and people deciding, and women are happier when they're divorced, and all these crazy things. And it's like, wow, there's a whole sort of other life out there. And people don't even know that, other people exist, that, you don't do IVF. Yeah,
Just to know that there are other options, right? Because I
right.
think that there is such a, and we've already talked about this, but like that there is this conveyor belt that the second that a woman is, has been trying for a year, oh, she's infertile or she's struggling with infertility, that's the only option that it feels
Yeah.
like every doctor, and I don't need to get into it, Leigh, but like I had one doctor that pretty much told me to stop effing around and get to this IVF clinic. And I was like, but
Yeah, they
I'm
get
telling you,
mean.
yeah. And I was, it reminded me of your story. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, but I'm telling you that that's not an option. I'm asking for what are other things, or these are things that I'm trying. And Leigh, I feel like it's so empowering for women to take ownership of their fertility and infertility journey and say, you know what? I'm not going to like listen to what this one person said or this person that was disrespectful to me and what I told them
Hmm.
I wanted, and saying, I'm going to march forward. I'm going to pave my own path, and I'm going to figure this out, whatever it looks like, right? Whether it's adoption or not having children or yeah, I
Just keep
just
trying. Keep
yeah.
trying the things that you're willing to try. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's so empowering what you're doing. And that's why I'm so excited, because it just helps women not feel so alone, but also encourages them to say, hey, there are other options. There are other ways.
Hmm.
Ask the questions and know that you're not marching by yourself. You're not an
Right.
island. You have this whole community of people.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally right. Community is just so important, especially for women. We crave it, we want it, but we make ourselves so busy that sometimes it's hard to maintain it or to even find the community that, you need.
The world tells women and girls that they don't matter, that one woman, one girl can't be a revolution. But that's not true. Every woman and every girl is a one girl revolution. Join the Every Woman, Every Girl campaign today by posting a video or graphic on social media telling us why you are a one girl revolution. Tag us, collab with us on Instagram, and shout out a woman or girl who inspires you. Tell us who is a one girl revolution in your life. Together, we are lifting voices, telling stories, and reminding every woman and girl who she really is. Follow along, share your story, and be a part of the movement. Because when every woman and every girl rises, the whole world changes. Join us today at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one, girlrevolution.com. If people were going to take one takeaway from your book without like spoiler alert, like I still want people to pre-order your book. I want people to
Mhm.
buy your book and we'll be promoting it. But if there was one takeaway from your book, what would you want people to take away from it?
That you're going to be okay. It really does, it can feel like it's going to kill you, the heartache. Um, but it won't. Just like having your heart broken in a romantic way feels like it could kill you. Um, and I, yeah, I think that's it. I mean, there's a way through. You can do it, and it might look like lots of different things, but I just want people to see us, know that it was well into my 40s that I was still hoping to be pregnant, and I didn't. Didn't ever happen, and I'm okay. And my husband and I are okay, and our marriage survived. A lot of marriages don't survive infertility. Um, I think that's it. I think I just want it to be a message of hope that, and it's not, again, it's not a hope that it's not gonna, reading the book is not gonna make you pregnant. You know, I think sometimes you can get that to that point where that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the one thing, like, oh, she says drink green tea, that's gonna do it. Um, but life is different. Like we talked about before, it's different than you planned. It doesn't look like maybe what you planned on, but it's okay. And it's not even just okay, it's good.
You talked earlier just about the articles that you've written and some of the things that about your own fertility journey. And this podcast is all about stories. And I
Hmm.
would love if there is a story or two that you feel comfortable sharing just about somebody who either read something about your story or saw a post on social media that reached out to you and what they said.
Yeah, it was interesting because there were people who I didn't know, strangers who, either left a comment or sent DMs. But then there were people who I had been friends with. And of course, we're all a little bit nosy and you wonder, why people aren't having a baby or, especially I think if you are yourself infertile, then you kind of like wonder like, oh, are they having trouble too? Of course, you never want to say like, hey, you want to talk about it? Um, but some people who I knew and I didn't know were suffering reached out to me because of those articles. And they just sort of, it just opened up like a well of like just like just unexpressed suffering that they hadn't read it. And when they read that, and it was, I really try to be honest and share as much as I can. And I think that knowing that all those feelings were okay, not wanting to go to a baby shower, like that's okay, that's normal, send a really great gift. Your friend doesn't want you to be in the bathroom in tears. I think I mean, that was one. I'm, thinking of one person in particular. Um, but then I mean, I think really there was actually a student of my husband's who he and his wife had been suffering for a couple years. Not they'd been married and weren't getting pregnant, and he was just sort of desperate one night, up late at night, looking up things on the computer, and he came across one of my pieces, and he said, "Snead, huh? Like I wonder if that's related to Carter Snead." And it was, and then that opened up a really beautiful, like sort of this is after he was a student of my husband's, like a beautiful, friendship between them. Because again, I think men don't have that community. Men aren't looking for it. Like again, women, we're driving it, we're advocating for ourselves, we're doing all these things. We find each other on social media. I don't think, I don't hear it as much that men are coming together because I think sometimes it's just the suffering of, I can't help my wife, and all I want to do is help my wife and protect her from feeling sad, and I can't fix this. And so, sort of reading my piece, figuring out that my husband had been his professor, and then reaching out to him was and like another just like little beautiful miracle of connection that I couldn't have ever predicted or hoped for even.
Yeah, it's so important for us to share our stories for that re
Yeah.
when you feel comfortable, sharing our stories can be so important and can help other people. How do you hope, Leigh, that your story empowers other women walking their own fertility journey right now?
I hope it inspires them to not convince themselves to put things off. Um, I hope it convinces them to, or inspires them to seek the best quality health care. I mean, that's really to be your own advocate, to do this, to, when if you are single and you're reading it, maybe you make sure you find a husband who, and just in case this happens, you have the gut feeling we're going to be okay, even if the worst happens. And I hope that it helps. I really do hope it helps priests and other religious people and counselors um, help people with infertility if it's not something that they've dealt with themselves.
I want to ask you about adoption too, because I
Yeah.
know that that's come up multiple times. What do you want people to know about adoption, and what are resources out there that helped you and Carter on your own journey?
You know, it's this is one of the reasons why I don't write too much about adoption because our experiences were really straightforward. We wanted to be parents, and so we got a home study, signed up with an agency, and were chosen um, pretty quickly. And that private newborn infant adoption, domestic, has worked for us. It can be more expensive for sure. Um, but that's, I mean, I think that if you're called to it, there's all kinds of ways there are still some overseas adoption programs open. Foster to adopt I have lots of friends who have done that. It's a tough road, especially because reunification is the goal in foster care. Um, And that's beautiful. And, and I've seen some really beautiful experiences happen with that, but that can be really hard if your arms have been empty for a long time. And so I think you just have to sit with these things, sit with the options. If you're called to adopt, what are the options that are going to work best for me? Because you're not, I mean, it's great if you can save the world, but you don't have to save the world here. Like we're talking about one family, one child, or, a family group. This is just one thing. And so you do what's going to be best for you and that child.
Tell our listeners about your life now. I know you kind of alluded to having a 20-year-old all the way down to a 3-year-old, but talk about your family life now and share a little bit about that with our listeners.
Yeah, so we moved to South Bend 20 years ago. My husband was a professor. He, at the law school at Notre Dame, he used to run a center called the Center for Ethics and Culture, but this is, I think, his second year after 13 years of running it that he's not doing anymore. And so that's been sort of a new change of pace for us, which is nice. Things are a lot slower now. We both still travel a good bit. He does a lot. And so we have a 20-year-old who is in college, not very, like a couple miles away, which is great. We have two, our middle kids are twins, identical twin boys, 14 years old, and they are on the autism spectrum. And we're homeschooling right now. And so that makes life busy. We have our youngest, Giovanni Battista, Gigi, who's 3 and is living up to the reputation of, a 3-year-old. He's definitely a three-nager. He kind of rules the roost here, everybody. I mean, because, Carter and I are in our 50s now. We're tired. And, he's not tired, but his big brothers are all just amazing with him and really patient because he wants nothing more than their attention. And so he drives them crazy. But I continue my work with the Catholic Association. I try to co-host our radio show, Conversations with Consequences. Kate, you've been a guest.
I have.
I do some other writing. Right now, though, I'm trying to do mostly sort of at least book adjacent things right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where
Well,
this.
I'm so excited about the book. I will be sure to put the link in the show notes so people can easily get a hold of it. They can pre-order it now. And then obviously when the book comes out, we'll re-promote it so people can be reminded when it's out
Oh, thank
on
you.
January 20th. So we will be sure to do that. And I will put all the different links so people can continue to follow the work you're doing and get in touch with you, on social media if they want more information about anything that we've talked about. But we,
Absolutely.
on this podcast, we talk a lot about one girl revolution, obviously. What does that phrase mean to you when you think about what is a one girl revolution, a world changing woman or girl? What does that phrase mean to you?
I was thinking about that because for me, really, it's about just getting started. And that's something that doesn't come naturally to me, but I'm lucky enough to have a group of friends, you included, that are younger, that are more millennial. I'm pretty firmly Gen X. And I'm thinking like you, Elise Italiano, Monse Alvarado, Ashley McGuire, these go-getter, you guys you just do it. And I think that just getting started and just doing something has crazy aftershocks, and I think and really it doesn't take, I mean, luckily we're all in the same community and, there's strength in numbers, but it doesn't take that. It takes one girl just to say something, just to do something, just to put something out there and sort of, not worry about every little tiny little consequence. You just believe something and then you just act upon it. And I've been so lucky to have sort of all these almost little sisters, like, that because as an only child too, I don't have that, but just the next generation below me, I just am floored all the time by what everyone's doing in all these different directions.
Well, you named some amazing women, and I feel so blessed that we have the community that we have that challenge one another and encourage one another and find opportunities like this to uplift one another. And yeah, we're just so blessed. But I'm going to have you do something difficultly because you mentioned
Okay.
some women there, but who is a one girl revolution that you want to give a shout out to? I know you just went through a bunch, but who is a one girl revolution, a woman or girl that inspires you that you want to give a shout out to on this podcast?
God, I just burned through my really good ones.
You could talk about one of them if you wanted and
Um,
why.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to our mutual friend Maddie Kearns. I mean, I just think that she's doing such incredible work, and the fact that she got so personal about her infertility journey or fertility journey rather, um, so soon after the birth of her daughter, not waiting like I did until, you were way past your fertility. Um, is really something. It's really something. And I'm just so glad that it caught on and she got so much attention for that article because it was really, really, really important. I'll add to that, there's a woman named Mary Bruno who writes in the infertility sphere too. And she's a coach, a NAPRO coach, and she has a wonderful book called 12 Stripes Deep, which when I read it as part of my research for my own book, just to sort of see what else was out there, it was the best thing I had ever read on infertility. Her journey, 12 Stripes refers to the 12 different surgeries she had trying to fix things. And that ended up ultimately in a hysterectomy at an early age. She talks about her family. She adopted one sweet little girl. She's amazing. So you should definitely everyone should look into Mary Bruno.
Amazing. And I will put that in the show notes too, so people can easily get that book as well as yours. And I can't wait to continue to follow everything that you're doing, Leigh. I'm so grateful to know you. I'm so grateful to have you on this podcast. But before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
That you are strong and capable, and you should never doubt it.
Well, Leigh, you are an example of that. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for everything that you are. And thank you for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you for having me, Kate.
For more from One Girl Revolution, to listen to all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy nominated documentary series, follow us on social media, donate to our nonprofit organization, and more, please visit onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.